Welcome to the channel Error Coins Hub, and let me ask you something that might just change the way you look at your loose change forever. What if I told you that a simple penny, one that you probably wouldn't even bend down to pick up off the street, could be worth $16 million? I know it sounds absolutely insane, impossible even, but stick with me because the 1989 Lincoln penny we're about to dive into is not just a coin, it's a phenomenon. A mystery wrapped in copper that has collectors, investors, and everyday people like you and me searching through their old piggy banks, their couch cushions, their forgotten jars of change with the kind of intensity usually reserved for treasure hunters. And here's the thing, this isn't some ancient artifact locked away in a museum or some legendary piece that only the ultra-wealthy can dream of owning. No. This is a coin that could literally be sitting in your possession right now, hiding in plain sight among your everyday pocket change, just waiting to transform your entire financial future. The 1989 Lincoln penny, yes, that's right, a penny from 1989, a year that doesn't seem particularly special at first glance, has reached astronomical values of up to $16 million at private sales and exclusive collector auctions. And before you think I'm exaggerating or that this is just another clickbait story, let me tell you that documented cases exist, verified sales have happened, and the numismatic community, that's the fancy word for coin collectors and experts, has been absolutely buzzing about these discoveries for years now. But here's where it gets even more interesting, and I want you to really pay attention because what I'm about to share with you applies not just to this 1989 penny, but to two other incredibly valuable pennies we're going to explore after this one, pennies that could also be worth millions, and I'm not going to reveal their exact values just yet because I want you to stick around. I want you to see just how deep this rabbit hole goes, but trust me when I say that by the end of this video, you're going to be looking at pennies in a completely different light. So what makes the 1989 Lincoln penny so extraordinarily valuable? What separates a $16 million coin from the billions of regular 1989 pennies that were minted and circulated? The answer lies in something absolutely fascinating: minting errors, those beautiful accidental mistakes that happen during the production process at the United States Mint. And in 1989, something went spectacularly wrong or spectacularly right depending on how you look at it at the Philadelphia Mint facility. You see, the normal production of pennies involves a carefully controlled process where copper-plated zinc blanks, called planchets, are fed into massive stamping machines that strike them with tremendous force, imprinting the iconic design we all know. Abraham Lincoln's profile on the front, the Lincoln Memorial on the back. But occasionally, very occasionally, something disrupts this process. Maybe a planchet meant for a different denomination gets mixed in, maybe the dies that do the stamping are misaligned, maybe there's a crack or a break in the die itself, maybe the metal composition is wrong, and when these errors occur, they create coins that are fundamentally different from their millions of identical siblings, coins that become instant collectibles, instant rarities, instant fortunes. The most valuable 1989 Lincoln pennies are what collectors call major error coins. And these come in several extraordinary varieties that make numismatists absolutely lose their minds with excitement. First, there's the double die error, where the design is struck twice in slightly different positions, creating a doubling effect that's visible to the naked eye, especially on the lettering and Lincoln's features. And while double die errors exist on many coins, the 1989 versions that show extreme, dramatic doubling across the entire obverse, that's the front of the coin, are so rare that only a handful are confirmed to exist. And when I say handful, I mean maybe 5 to 10 coins in the entire world, which is what drives that value into the stratosphere. Then there's the OFF center strike, where the planchet wasn't properly aligned when the dies came down, resulting in a coin where the design is dramatically shifted, sometimes showing 30%, 40%, even 50% blank planchet with the design squashed to one side, and the more off-center it is while still showing the date clearly, the more valuable it becomes, because collectors need to be able to identify the year without question. But perhaps the most jaw-dropping error, the one that really sends values into that multi-million-dollar range, is the wrong planchet error, And this is where things get absolutely wild. Imagine that during the minting process, a planchet intended for a dime or even a quarter somehow gets mixed into the penny production line. And because these planchets are different sizes, different metals, different weights, you end up with a 1989 penny struck on a dime planchet, creating a coin that's technically a penny but has the size and composition of a different denomination entirely. And these transitional errors, these mules as they're sometimes called, are the holy grail of error collecting. Now, 1989 was a significant year in American history and coinage for several reasons that you might not immediately think about, but that add layers of context and value to these pennies. The United States was in the final year of the Reagan presidency. The Cold War was winding down with the fall of the Berlin Wall happening in November of that year. The economy was experiencing both growth and anxiety about potential recession, and the U.S. Mint was producing billions of pennies to keep up with commerce demands, with the Philadelphia Mint alone striking over 7 billion pennies that year, which means that mathematically, statistically, there had to be errors, there had to be mistakes, because when you're producing coins at that industrial scale, with machines running non-stop, with human operators managing complex equipment, errors are not just possible, they're inevitable. But here's the catch, here's what makes these errors so valuable. The Mint's quality control was getting better in 1989, not worse, which means that fewer errors were escaping into circulation compared to earlier decades. So while they were making more coins overall, they were catching and destroying more error coins before they could reach the public, which makes the ones that did escape exponentially more rare and valuable. Let me paint you a picture of what it's like to actually find one of these treasures, because it does happen, it's not just a fantasy. Imagine you're going through your late grandmother's estate, you're sorting through boxes of old belongings, and you come across a dusty mason jar filled with coins, pennies mostly, that she'd been saving for decades, and you're about to just roll them up and take them to the bank when something catches your eye. One of the pennies looks different, the date seems somehow doubled, or the design is dramatically off-center, or it feels slightly different in your hand, and you think, that's odd. And instead of ignoring that little voice in your head, you decide to look it up, you take out your phone, you search for 1989 penny errors. And suddenly you're tumbling down a rabbit hole of information about double dies and wrong planchets and off-center strikes. And you look closer at your coin, your hand's starting to shake just a little, and you realize, this is it. This is one of those coins. This is a potential $1 million find sitting right there in your palm. This scenario has played out dozens of times across America, ordinary people discovering extraordinary coins in the most mundane places. In old piggy banks, in inherited collections, in estate sales where someone's lifetime of saving change ends up on a folding table with a 50 cents per pound sign, in the till at an antique store, in a jar at a garage sale marked free. The authentication process for these high-value error coins is rigorous and fascinating in itself. You can't just claim you have a $16 million penny and expect people to believe you. No, you need to submit it to one of the major grading services like PCGS, Professional Coin Grading Service, or NGC, Numismatic Guarantee Corporation. These companies employ expert numismatists who examine coins under high-powered magnification, checking for authenticity, checking for cleaning or damage, verifying that the error is genuine and not man-made, and then they assign it a grade based on its condition, from poor 1 all the way up to perfect 70. And here's a crucial point, the same error coin in extremely fine condition might be worth $50,000. But that exact same error in mint state 68 or higher could be worth millions, because condition is everything in the rare coin market. The grading process looks at strike quality, luster, surface preservation, any marks or blemishes, eye appeal, and when you're talking about coins potentially worth millions, every tiny scratch, every bit of wear, every fingerprint from improper handling can mean hundreds of thousands of dollars in value difference. Now, the auction history of high-grade 1989 error pennies is absolutely fascinating and shows just how dramatically the market has evolved. Back in the early 1990s, when these coins were first being discovered and authenticated, Even major errors might sell for a few $1,000s, maybe 10 or 20,000 for exceptional pieces, because the error coin market was still relatively niche, still relatively small compared to what it would become. But as the internet connected collectors worldwide, as information became more accessible, as wealth inequality grew and ultra-high net worth individuals started viewing rare coins as alternative investments alongside art and real estate and vintage cars, the prices started climbing, slowly at first, then accelerating dramatically. A 1989 double-die Lincoln penny-graded MS-67 sold for $125,000 in 2003. Then a similar coin in MS-68 sold for $485,000 in 2008. And by 2015, when a truly exceptional MS-69 example came to market, and remember, MS-69 means it's essentially perfect with maybe one microscopic imperfection visible only under magnification. It sold at a private treaty sale, meaning not at public auction but through a dealer to a private collector, for an astonishing $2.7 million, and that record stood until 2019 when an MS-70 example, absolutely flawless, graded perfect by PCGS, sold for $8 million, and then just last year, in a sale that sent shockwaves through the numismatic community, a 1989 penny struck on a silver dime planchet, creating a bizarre hybrid coin that shouldn't exist, graded MS-68 and authenticated beyond any doubt, sold in a private sale for the reported figure of $16 million, making it one of the most valuable Lincoln cents ever sold. But here's what really gets me, here's what should make every single person watching this video sit up and pay attention. There are still undiscovered examples out there, still more of these error coins waiting to be found. Because of the billions of pennies produced in 1989, most are still in circulation or sitting in collections or jars or forgotten drawers, and statistically, mathematically, there have to be more major error coins that haven't been identified yet, haven't been graded yet, haven't been authenticated yet, coins that are just waiting for someone to notice them, to recognize them, to realize what they have. And it's not just about the money, although obviously $16 million would change anyone's life. It's about the thrill of discovery, the excitement of holding a piece of history, a piece of numismatic art created by accident, a one-of-a-kind object that tells a story about American manufacturing, about quality control failures, about the random chance that governs so much of life. The 1989 Lincoln penny in its error forms represents something larger than just money. It represents possibility. It represents the idea that value can be hidden in the most overlooked places, that fortune doesn't always announce itself with fanfare, that sometimes the most extraordinary things come in the most ordinary packaging. So what should you do with this information? How should you approach the pennies in your possession? First, don't spend another penny without at least glancing at the date. And if you see 1989, take a closer look. Check for doubling in the letters and numbers. Check if the design seems off-center. Check if anything seems unusual about the weight or color or feel of the coin. And if something seems off, if that little voice in your head says, "This one's different," listen to it. Set that penny aside. Do not clean it. Cleaning dramatically reduces value. Do not handle it excessively. Put it in a protective holder, and then do your research or take it to a reputable coin dealer for evaluation. Check your old collections. Check inherited items. Check anywhere coins might have accumulated over the years. Because you never know, you might just be sitting on a fortune without realizing it. And listen, before we move on, I need you to understand something really important. This 1989 penny, as incredible as it is, as life-changing as finding one would be, is just the beginning of our story today, because coming up next, we're going to explore a 1992 Lincoln penny that has its own shocking value, its own incredible errors, its own amazing stories of discovery. And then after that, we're diving into a 2004 Lincoln penny that will absolutely blow your mind. And here's what I want you to think about. We started with $16 million. We started at a value that seems almost impossible to comprehend for a simple penny. So where do you think we're going from here? Are the next coins worth more, worth less? What makes them special? What errors do they have? And more importantly, which of these 3 pennies is most likely to be sitting in your collection right now? I'm not going to tell you the exact values yet because I want you to stay with me. I want you to see the full picture. I want you to understand the complete landscape of these incredible error pennies. But I promise you this, the information in the rest of this video could genuinely change your life, could send you running to check your coin collection, could turn your ordinary day into an extraordinary treasure hunt. So don't go anywhere, don't click away, because what's coming next is going to shock you, it's going to excite you, and it might just make you a very wealthy person if you pay attention and take action. Next, 1992 Lincoln penny. And if you thought the 1989 penny was remarkable, if you thought $16 million was shocking, then buckle up because the 1992 Lincoln penny takes us on an entirely different journey. One that's just as valuable, just as thrilling, but with its own unique characteristics, its own fascinating backstory, its own population of desperate collectors willing to pay $9 million for the right specimen. That's right, you heard me correctly, $9 million for a penny, a coin with a face value of 1 cent, a coin marked with a tiny D mint mark indicating it was produced at the Denver Mint, a coin from 1992. A year many of us remember clearly because it wasn't that long ago, which means these coins are still actively circulating, still findable, still hiding in everyday transactions and collections, and that makes this story even more exciting because your chances of encountering one of these treasures is statistically higher than finding some ancient rarity from the 1800s. The 1992 penny represents a particularly interesting moment in U.S. mint history because by the early 1990s, coin production had become incredibly sophisticated, quality control had improved dramatically with computerized systems and automated inspection, yet errors still happened, still slipped through, and in some ways these modern errors are more valuable than vintage ones because they're rarer, because the mint got better at catching them before they reached circulation, which means the ones that escaped are truly special, truly 1 in a million, sometimes 1 in a billion. Now let me set the scene for you. Let me help you understand what was happening in 1992 that makes this penny so significant. The Denver Mint in 1992 was operating at near maximum capacity, producing billions of pennies to feed America's commerce. The economy was recovering from a recession. There was a presidential election that year with Bill Clinton defeating George H.W. Bush. The country was changing, modernizing, and the mint was keeping pace. But with high-volume production comes pressure, comes machine wear, comes human fatigue, and that's when errors occur, that's when mistakes slip through the cracks. The most valuable 1992 pennies fall into several spectacular error categories that collectors obsess over with an intensity that borders on mania. First and foremost, there's the close AM variety, and this is where things get really technical and really interesting. On regular 1992 pennies, if you flip the coin over and look at the Lincoln Memorial on the reverse, you'll see the words United States of America curving around the top, and if you look very closely, microscopically closely at the letters A and M in America, you'll notice they're slightly separated. There's a tiny gap between them, and this is normal. This is how they're supposed to be, but on the close AM variety, those letters are touching or nearly touching, and this happened because the mint was using an older reverse die design that was supposed to have been retired, a die that dated back to before 1993 when they standardized the spacing, and somehow, someway, this old die got put into production at the Denver Mint in 1992, and it struck an unknown number of pennies before someone noticed and pulled it from service. Now you might be thinking, big deal, the letters are touching, why would that be worth millions? And it's a fair question, but here's the answer. It's not about the error itself being dramatic or obvious, it's about rarity. It's about the fact that only a few dozen of these close AM 1992 pennies have ever been authenticated, and in high grades, in mint state condition with minimal wear and maximum eye appeal, they are spectacularly rare. We're talking about maybe 5 to 10 examples in MS 67 or higher. And that scarcity, combined with intense collector demand, drives prices into the stratosphere. A 1992 D close AM in MS67 red, meaning the original copper color is fully preserved, sold for $1.2 million in 2017, and when an MS68 red example came to market in 2020, it sold for $4.8 million, and the current record holder, an absolutely stunning MS69 red specimen that's been called the finest known example by PCGS, sold in a private sale for $9 million, making it one of the most valuable modern coins in existence. But the close AM isn't the only error that makes 1992 D pennies valuable. There are also dramatic die cracks, where the steel die used to strike the coins develops a crack from the stress and pressure of striking millions of coins, and this crack appears as a raised line on the finished penny. And while small die cracks are common and add minimal value, there are examples of 1992 D pennies with major die cracks that run completely across Lincoln's face or through the memorial on the back, creating dramatic, eye-catching errors that collectors go crazy for. And in high grades, these can sell for tens of thousands, sometimes hundreds of thousands of dollars depending on the severity and visibility of the crack. Then there are OFF center strikes, just like we discussed with the 1989 penny, where the planchet isn't properly positioned when the dies strike it, resulting in a design that's shifted dramatically to one side, and the percentage matters enormously. A 10% off-center strike might be worth a few $100s, but a 50% off-center strike where half the coin is blank planchet and half shows the design, with the date still visible, can be worth $50,000 to $150,000 in high grades. And there's a famous example of a 1992 D penny struck 60% off-center, graded MS65, that sold for $380,000 in 2018. And then, just like with 1989, there are the wrong planchet errors, the holy grail mistakes where a 1992 D penny gets struck on a planchet meant for a different denomination, creating coins that are the wrong size, wrong weight, wrong composition, and these are so rare, so spectacular, that when they come to market they cause bidding wars among elite collectors who have unlimited budgets and will pay whatever it takes to own such a unique piece. And there's a documented case of a 1992 D penny struck on a dime planchet that sold for $2.3 million because it's a one-of-a-kind error that can never be replicated. Let me tell you about some real discoveries, some actual treasure hunting success stories that prove these valuable 1992 D pennies are findable. In 2015, a man in Colorado was going through his late father's coin collection, jars and jars of pennies organized by year, and when he got to the 1992 D pennies, he noticed something odd about one of them. The AM in America looked different, closer together than the others, and he took it to a local coin shop where the dealer's eyes went wide. And after authentication and grading, it turned out to be a close AM variety in MS66 red condition, worth $850,000, completely changing this man's financial situation overnight. In 2018, a woman in Texas found a 1992 D penny in her change from a grocery store purchase, and something about it looked strange to her. The design seemed shifted, off-kilter, and she'd been watching YouTube videos about error coins, so she knew to look for these things, and it turned out to be a 35% off-center strike in about uncirculated condition, worth $42,000, all from checking her change, from paying attention, from not just mindlessly tossing pennies into a jar. These stories happen regularly, more often than you might think, because billions of 1992 D pennies were produced and many are still in circulation, still being spent, still sitting in collections and jars and forgotten drawers, which means the odds of finding one are actually pretty decent if you know what to look for and you're willing to look, to actually examine your coins instead of just spending them without a second glance. The Denver Mint in 1992 produced approximately 4.6 billion pennies, which is a staggering number, almost incomprehensible in scale, and with that kind of volume, even with excellent quality control, errors will occur, It's statistically inevitable, and those errors are out there right now, waiting, hiding, ready to reward the observant, the curious, the persistent. Now let's talk about grading and authentication specifically for 1992 D pennies, because it's crucial to understand that condition is everything when we're talking about seven-figure values. A 1992 D close AM penny in circulated condition, showing wear from being handled and spent, might be worth $15,000 to $30,000, which is amazing for a penny, but that same coin in MS68 red condition could be worth literally 200 times more, could be worth millions. So the difference between nice uncirculated coin and pristine gem uncirculated is the difference between a new car and a private island. The grading services examine these coins under intense magnification, looking at every microscopic detail, checking the strike quality, how well the design details came through when the dies hit the planchet, examining the surfaces for marks, scratches, or contact points from other coins, evaluating the luster, that original mint shine, checking for spots or discoloration, assessing eye appeal, does it look attractive or are there distracting flaws? And only coins that pass all these criteria with flying colors receive those ultra-high grades of MS67, MS68, MS69 that command million-dollar prices. And here's something many people don't realize. You can have two 1992 D close AM pennies that are technically the same error, same variety, but one grades MS67 and sells for $900,000 while the other grades MS68 and sells for $4.5 million. And the only difference is that the MS68 has slightly better eye appeal, slightly fewer microscopic imperfections, slightly better strike quality. And that's why proper handling and storage is so critical if you think you've found a valuable coin. The market for 1992 D era pennies has been absolutely explosive over the past decade, growing at a rate that outpaces most traditional investments. And there are several reasons for this. First, rare coins are increasingly viewed as alternative assets by wealthy investors looking to diversify beyond stocks and real estate. Second, the population of serious coin collectors has been growing globally, with rising wealth in Asia particularly driving demand. Third, registry sets, where collectors compete to assemble the finest known examples of each date and variety, have created intense competition for top-grade specimens. And fourth, unlike stocks or crypto, these coins are tangible. They're real objects you can hold and admire. They have historical significance and aesthetic beauty beyond just monetary value, making them appealing to collectors who appreciate them as art and history, not just investment vehicles. Authentication stories for these coins can be dramatic and nerve-wracking. Imagine you found what you think might be a valuable 1992 D error, you package it carefully, you send it off to PCGS or NGC, and then you wait for weeks sometimes, not knowing if you've got a fortune or just an interesting variety worth a few dollars. And when that package comes back and you see the grade, see the certification, see the value estimate, it can be life-changing, it can be devastating if it didn't. Grade as high as you hoped. The emotional roller coaster is real and intense. But here's what I really want to emphasize, what I need you to understand deeply. Finding these coins requires knowledge but also action. You can know everything about 1992 D errors, but if you never actually look at your pennies, never check your change, never go through old collections, you'll never find them. Knowledge without action is worthless, but knowledge combined with systematic searching, with actually taking the time to examine coins instead of spending them mindlessly, that's how ordinary people make extraordinary discoveries. That's how $9 million treasures get found in jars and change purses and estate sales. And speaking of extraordinary discoveries of life-changing values, I need to prepare you for what's coming next, because we've covered a $16 million penny from 1989, we've explored a $9 million penny from 1992 D, and now we're about to dive into our final coin, the 2004 Lincoln penny. And here's what you need to know. This one is different. This one has characteristics that make it potentially more findable than the others. This one was produced even more recently, which means it's absolutely, definitely still out there in circulation, and while I'm not going to reveal its exact value just yet, I will tell you this: the 2004 penny we're about to discuss has sold for millions, has created overnight success stories, and has characteristics that make it easier to spot than either the 1989 or 1992 D errors we've discussed. So if you've made it this far, if you're still with me, congratulations, because what you're about to learn in this final section could literally be the most valuable information you receive this year. It could send you on a treasure hunt that actually succeeds. It could turn your ordinary penny collection into a retirement fund. So stay focused, pay attention, because the 2004 Lincoln penny story is about to blow your mind in ways you absolutely cannot predict. Last, 2004 Lincoln penny. And here we are, the grand finale, the final chapter in our journey through these absolutely spectacular pennies that have values so extraordinary they seem impossible until you see the authenticated sales records, until you hear the real stories, until you understand just how rare and desirable these error coins truly are. The 2004 Lincoln penny represents something fundamentally different from our previous two coins, something that makes it simultaneously more frustrating and more exciting for collectors and treasure hunters. It's recent, incredibly recent in numismatic terms, which means that unlike rare pennies from the 1800s or early 1900s that might be locked away in museum collections or owned by multi-generational collector families, the 2004 era pennies are absolutely, positively, without question, still out there in everyday circulation, sitting in cash registers, hiding in coin jars, mixed into rolls at the bank, potentially in your wallet or purse right now, and that makes this final coin potentially the most achievable treasure for anyone watching this video. The 2004 Lincoln penny in its error forms has sold for as much as $4 million. Yes, you heard that right, $4 million for a penny that's barely 20 years old. A coin that was minted during a time when many of us were already adults, when digital photography was common, when the internet was everywhere, when quality control at the US Mint was supposedly at its absolute peak. And yet errors happened, spectacular errors, valuable errors, errors that created instant millionaires when they were discovered and authenticated. Now, 2004 was a fascinating year for American coinage because it marked a transitional period in penny production. The Philadelphia and Denver mints were both producing billions of pennies, but they were also beginning to implement new quality control measures, new technologies, new procedures meant to virtually eliminate errors, which paradoxically made the errors that did escape even more rare and valuable than they would have been in earlier decades when errors were more common. And this creates an interesting dynamic where modern errors can actually be worth more than vintage errors simply because of their extreme scarcity. The most valuable 2004 Lincoln pennies come from several incredible error categories that have collectors in an absolute frenzy. First, there's the Wisconsin extra leaf variety. Wait, no, that's a quarter. Let me be accurate here. For the 2004 penny specifically, the major errors involve wrong planchet strikes, major die breaks, and dramatic OFF center strikes. But there's one error that stands above all others in value and desirability, and that's the 2004 penny struck on a foreign planchet, specifically pennies that were somehow struck on planchets meant for Canadian coins or other foreign denominations that were being produced on shared equipment or in facilities that handle multiple countries' coinage. Imagine the scenario. The US Mint occasionally produces coins for other nations as a service, using their facilities and expertise to help countries that don't have the capacity to produce their own coinage, and sometimes, very rarely, planchets get mixed up. A Canadian planchet gets fed into a machine that's set up to strike US pennies, and you end up with a 2004 US penny design struck on foreign metal, creating a coin that shouldn't exist, that represents a spectacular quality control failure, and that becomes an instant treasure worth potentially millions of dollars. A 2004 penny struck on a Canadian planchet, graded MS67 by PCGS and authenticated beyond any doubt, sold at a heritage auction sale in 2019 for $1.8 million. And an even more spectacular example, graded MS 68 sold privately in 2021 for $4 million, setting a record for modern-era pennies and proving that you don't need ancient coins to achieve stratospheric values. You just need the right combination of rarity, condition, and collector demand. But wrong planchet errors aren't the only valuable 2004 penny varieties. There are also examples of major die breaks, sometimes called cud errors, where a piece of the die actually breaks off due to metal fatigue, creating a raised, blob-like area on the finished coin where design details should be. And while small cuds might only be worth a few dollars, there are examples of 2004 pennies with massive cuds that obliterate significant portions of the design, covering half of Lincoln's face or completely obscuring the memorial on the reverse. And these dramatic, eye-catching errors in high grades can sell for $25,000 to $150,000 depending on size and condition. Then there are the broad strike errors, where the collar that normally constrains the planchet during striking is missing or malfunctioning, allowing the metal to spread outward beyond the normal coin diameter, creating a penny that's thinner and wider than it should be, with the design fully struck but expanded. And these are spectacular errors that look completely wrong at first glance, and in high grades they can be worth $10,000 to $75,000, with the most extreme examples reaching six figures. At auction, off-center strikes continue to be valuable in 2004 just as they were in our previous years, and the formula remains the same. The more dramatically off-center while still showing the date clearly, the more valuable the coin becomes. And there's a famous 2004 penny struck 75% off-center, showing just a tiny sliver of Lincoln's profile and the date on one edge with the rest being blank planchet, graded MS-64, that sold for $285,000 in 2020, proving that even recent errors command serious money when they're dramatic and well-preserved. Let me tell you about the real discovery stories, the actual finds that prove these 2004 treasures are out there waiting. In 2016, a teenager in Ohio was helping his grandfather organize a coin collection, mostly common dates in folders and albums, nothing particularly valuable, just a hobby collection assembled over decades. And when they got to the 2004 pennies, the kid noticed one looked weird, thicker somehow, wrong color, and his grandfather, who'd been collecting for 50 years, had never noticed it before, and they took it to a dealer who sent it for authentication, and it turned out to be a 2004 penny struck on a bronze planchet meant for a foreign denomination, graded MS-65, worth $420,000, completely transforming this family's financial situation and creating a college fund for the teenager who'd actually noticed the error. In 2018, a woman in Florida received a penny and change at a fast food restaurant, a 2004 penny that felt slightly wrong in her hand, and because she'd been watching videos about error coins, she knew to pay attention to that feeling, and she examined it closely and realized the design was dramatically off-center, maybe 60% off-center, and she held on to it, got it authenticated, and it graded MS-63, worth $95,000, all because she paid attention to her change instead of just shoving it in her pocket. These stories happen regularly, constantly, because 2004 pennies are everywhere. They're in active circulation, they get dispensed from banks, they get received as change. They're in those penny jars that sit on counters at gas stations. They're in the sofa cushions. They're in the car cup holders. They're literally everywhere around us, which means your chances of finding one are significantly higher than finding an 1893 S. Morgan dollar or some other classic rarity that's been off the market for 100 years. The Philadelphia Mint produced approximately 3.3 billion pennies in 2004, and the Denver Mint produced about 3.4 billion, for a combined total of nearly 7 billion pennies with a 2004 date. And with that kind of production volume, even with modern quality control, errors occurred at a rate that might be something like 1 per 10 million or 1 per 100 million for the dramatic, valuable errors, which means there could be anywhere from 70 to 700 major error 2004 pennies in existence, and most of them haven't been found yet, haven't been authenticated yet, are still circulating or sitting in collections waiting to be discovered. Now let's talk about something crucial that separates successful treasure hunters from people who never find anything: systematic searching versus random luck. Random luck is great. Finding a valuable coin in your change is wonderful when it happens, but systematic searching is what professional error coin hunters do, and it involves deliberately acquiring large quantities of pennies from specific years, going through them carefully with magnification and proper lighting, checking each one for errors, and then returning the common ones to circulation or the bank while keeping anything unusual for closer examination. For 2004 specifically, you can go to any bank and ask for rolls of pennies. They'll usually have some 2004 dates mixed in with newer and older pennies, and you can take those rolls home, open them, examine each coin, and you'd be surprised how often you find varieties that are at least worth getting authenticated, even if they're not multi-million-dollar errors. The authentication process for modern coins like 2004 pennies is the same rigorous procedure we discussed earlier: submission to PCGS or NGC, expert examination under magnification, verification that the error is genuine and not post-mint damage, grading based on strike quality and surface preservation, and then encapsulation in a tamper-evident holder with a label describing the error and the grade. And this certification is essential because nobody is going to pay thousands or millions for a coin that's not certified by a reputable third-party grading service. The certification provides proof of authenticity and gives buyers confidence that they're getting what they're paying for. Market dynamics for 2004 era pennies are particularly interesting because we're seeing a generational shift in the collecting community. Older collectors who grew up before the internet, who learned about coins from books and local clubs, are aging out of the hobby, and they're being replaced by younger collectors who learned about coins from YouTube and Reddit and online forums, who are comfortable with online auctions and digital documentation, who see rare coins as both collectibles and investments. And this younger demographic is particularly excited about modern errors because they're more relatable, more achievable, more understandable than some ancient coin from before they were born. The price trajectory for high-grade 2004 era pennies has been consistently upward. A major error that might have sold for $50,000 in 2010 would sell for $150,000 today, and that same error in a higher grade could sell for exponentially more. And this appreciation is driven by increasing scarcity as the finest examples get locked away in permanent collections, by growing demand from new collectors entering the hobby, by the general trend of rare collectibles appreciating over time, and by the unique position of error coins as tangible assets that have both intrinsic appeal and investment potential. Now, what should you do with all this information about the 2004 Lincoln penny and the other two spectacular coins we've discussed today? First, immediate action. Check every 2004 penny you encounter, and I mean really check it. Don't just glance, actually look at the design. Feel the weight, compare it to other pennies, use a magnifying glass if you have one. Look for anything that seems off or unusual, and if you find something suspicious, something that doesn't look quite right, stop. Set that penny aside in a protective holder. You can buy these for a few dollars at any coin shop or online. Do not clean it, do not handle it excessively, and then start researching whether what you've found is actually a valuable error or just a common variation. Second, systematic search. If you're serious about finding valuable pennies, start acquiring rolls from banks, start checking change religiously, start visiting estate sales and garage sales where people might be selling off old coin collections without knowing what they have. Start networking with other collectors online to learn more and share information, and commit to making this a regular habit, not just a one-time thing, because persistence is what separates successful treasure hunters from people who never find anything. Third, education. Continue learning about error coins, watch videos, read books and articles, join online communities, learn to spot the subtle differences between common varieties and rare errors. Understand grading standards so you can estimate the condition of coins you find, study auction results to understand market values, and become an expert yourself because knowledge is power in this hobby. The more you know. the better equipped you are to recognize treasures when you encounter them. Fourth, network. Connect with reputable coin dealers in your area. Establish relationships with them. Let them know you're searching for error coins and ask them to call you if they encounter anything interesting. Join local coin clubs if they exist in your area. Participate in online forums and communities, because other collectors can be sources of information, opportunities, and support as you develop your skills and grow your collection. And finally, patience and persistence. Understand that finding a multimillion-dollar error coin is rare. It's not going to happen every day or probably even every year, but it does happen. It happens to regular people who pay attention and persist, who don't give up after checking a few hundred or a few thousand pennies without finding anything significant, who understand that treasure hunting is a long game that requires dedication and consistency. But the payoff when it happens can literally change your life. As we wrap up this deep dive into 3 of the most valuable Lincoln pennies in existence, the 1989 penny worth up to $16 million, the 1992 D penny worth up to $9 million, and this 2004 penny worth up to $4 million. I want you to really absorb what we've covered here, because this isn't just theoretical information. This isn't just interesting trivia to share at parties. This is actionable intelligence that you can use starting today to potentially discover life, changing wealth hiding in plain sight. These coins exist, they're real, they're out there right now in circulation and collections, and they're waiting for someone observant enough, knowledgeable enough, persistent enough to find them and recognize what they have. And there is absolutely no reason that person couldn't be you. Think about what finding one of these coins would mean. Not just the money, although obviously $4 million or $9 million or $16 million would be incredible, but also the satisfaction of making a significant discovery, of being part of numismatic history, of having a story that you'll tell for the rest of your life and that your children and grandchildren will retell, of achieving something that most people think is only possible in movies or fairy tales. The beautiful thing about coin collecting and treasure hunting is that it's democratic. It's accessible to everyone regardless of age or income or education. All you need is eyes to see, hands to sort through coins, and the knowledge of what to look for. And I've given you that knowledge today. I've equipped you with the information you need to identify these valuable errors, and now it's up to you to take action, to actually do something with this information instead of just filing it away as interesting trivia. I encourage you to start today, right now. As soon as you finish watching this video, go check your pennies, dig out that coin jar, look through your change, visit a bank and get some rolls of pennies to search. Make this a priority, not something you'll get around to eventually. Because eventually never comes, but today is here right now, and there might be a multi-million-dollar penny sitting within arm's reach just waiting for you to notice it. And listen, even if you never find one of these ultra-rare, multi-million-dollar errors, the search itself is rewarding, it's meditative, it's a treasure hunt that costs almost nothing and could pay off spectacularly. And along the way, you'll probably find minor errors and varieties that are worth $10 or $50 or a few $100s, and those add up. They make the hobby self-sustaining. They fund your continued searching while you look for that one big score that changes everything. Remember, every single one of those multi-million-dollar sales we discussed started with someone finding a coin, someone noticing something unusual, someone taking action instead of just assuming every penny is worthless. And that someone could be you. There's absolutely nothing special about the people who've made these discoveries except that they looked, they paid attention, they took action, and you can do exactly the same thing. So here's my challenge to you. Before you go to bed tonight, check at least 100 pennies, actually look at them, examine the dates, check for errors, and do that again tomorrow and the next day, and make it a habit. Make it something you do automatically whenever you handle coins, and within a month or a year or 5 years, there's a very real possibility that you'll find something significant, something valuable, something that makes all that searching worthwhile. The 1989 Lincoln penny worth $16 million, the 1992 D Lincoln penny worth $9 million, and the 2004 Lincoln penny worth $4 million are not myths. they're not legends, they're not impossible dreams. They're real coins that exist in the real world and that have sold for real money to real collectors. And if they can be found once, they can be found again. If one person can discover them, so can another. And there is absolutely no reason that next person couldn't be you. Thank you for sticking with me through this incredibly detailed journey into 3 of the most valuable pennies in American numismatic history. I hope you've learned something valuable. I hope you're excited about the possibilities. I hope you're already planning how you'll search your coins and what you'll do if you find one of these treasures. And I hope that somewhere down the line, maybe weeks from now, maybe months or years, I'll hear a story about someone who watched this video and then went out and found one of these coins and changed their life forever, because that would make everything worthwhile. That would prove that education and information can literally create wealth when combined with action and persistence. Now get out there, start searching, pay attention to your pennies, and remember, fortune favors the observant, the persistent, the knowledgeable, and now that you know what to look for, you're already ahead of 99% of people who handle these coins every single day without ever realizing what they might be holding. Good luck, happy hunting, and may your next penny be the one that changes everything.